First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite Lloyd Kaufman from our Planning Commission to lead us in the pledge. If everyone could please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. Next on our agenda is reflection, and I'll just note we're dressed a little bit more casually than you normally see us at regular meetings because it is going to be in the teens tonight, so I asked everybody to please dress warmly and comfortably. Unfortunately, I forgot to mention that to the planning commissioners who will be joining us, and they're a little bit more dressy than we are, and I'm sorry, guys. If I can call for a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda, and I will also note that Councilmember McNulty is with us via Zoom. So I will be calling on him when we have votes and when he wants to speak. And we're about to do the approval of minutes, so I'm going to be calling on him soon. So we have one set of minutes to approve. It's from the regular meeting on Tuesday, January 2nd. What is the pleasure of the council?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And tech team, if you can just... Yeah, I see Jim's all right. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed say nay. That carries 5-0. Thank you very much. And next we have appointments. And tonight there's an appointment and several reappointments. What is the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I will move your resolution appointing and reappointing to the Transportation Committee for a term ending January 2026, Nicholas Ricci, Gaithersburg Community. Reappointments to the Animal Control Board, 3-year term ending January 2027. Marie Stiles, also for Gaithersburg Community. To the Board of Appeals for a 3-year term ending January 2027. Carol Reeg of Pheasant Run. To the Educational Enrichment Committee for 2-year terms, both ending January 2026. Stacy Simon of Orchard Hills, Teresa Wright of Asbury Methodist Village. To the Environmental Affairs Committee for a 2-year term expiring in January 2026. Adam Young of Quince Orchard Park. And to the Senior Advisory Committee, both 2-year terms expiring January 2026. Mary Hoffernick, Pheasant Run, and Yvette Monroe of Old Town.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Okay, that carries unanimously. Is there anybody whose name we just mentioned as an appointee to a committee? Not seeing any? Okay. Well, then we will thank them when we see them, but I'll remind everybody that serving on a city committee is a terrific way to get involved and contribute meaningfully to the business of the city and get to know how the city works and other like-minded people, so I can't recommend it enough. And we will actually, from the Mayor and Council, have an announcement of vacancies on city committees for you to consider. Next on our agenda is presentations, and our first one, I'm going to invite Janice Hartman, our Director of Finance and Administration, and Christopher Lehman, our audit partner from SB & Company, to come to the table and give us our annual comprehensive financial report presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the city has completed the audit of the FY23 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, otherwise known as the ACFR. The ACFR was completed and filed with the state of Maryland by the October 31st deadline. These documents are available on the city's website under the Finance Department and also included in your packet tonight. The audit of the city's schedule of federal expenditures is underway. A single audit is an organization-wide financial statement and federal awards audit of a non-federal entity that expends $750,000 or more in federal funds in 1 year. In FY23, the general fund, which is the primary operating fund of the city, showed an increase in fund balance of $11.9 million compared to a budgeted decrease of $0.7 million. The increase is due to various revenue sources outperforming budgeted amounts by $6.7 million, coupled with lower than planned expenses, primarily due to vacancies and also savings in public works due to due to the mild winter last year, which generates savings both in overtime and operating cost. So some of the notable revenue overages include $1.6 million in intergovernmental revenue, which includes shared income taxes and state grants for police and arts, property tax revenue of $0.6 million, admission and amusement tax of $0.7 million, and $2.7 million in investment earnings. Overall, the governmental fund balance, which includes all of the funds, general fund, stormwater, CIP, and other non-major funds, increased $15.3 million to $179.1 million fund balance. The city's FY22 financial report received the Government Finance Officer Association's Certificate of Achievement and Excellence for financial reporting for the 45th, oh goodness, that's a mouthful, is for the 45th consecutive year. So this certificate is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting. And Finance has also submitted the FY23 ACFR for this award program as well. So, and Chris Lehman from SB and Company is with our external auditing firm is here tonight. So he'll be here to go through the audit process with you and answer any questions on that process. And I will turn it over to him now.
All right, well, thank you, Janice, and good evening, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you. And again, I'm Chris Lehman. I was the audit partner, again, for this year's financial statement audit, as well as overseeing the single audit work. This is our firm's second year now doing your financial statement audit. So I have a brief presentation here that I'll walk through that goes through our firm and industry required communications. If you have questions as I go through it, please feel free to jump in or hold those to the end. I have it on the screen here. Are you able to see it all also?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. So the scope of services that we were engaged to perform was the audit of the June 30, 2023 financial statements for the city. In addition, we do provide assistance with drafting the financial statements. That is a service that we can provide that does not impair our independence. We just have to make sure that all the data, all the records are coming from management and that we're not housing or controlling any city records or data. We also will complete the Uniform Guidance Single Audit, as Janice referenced. That's a federal compliance audit. We still have to complete that audit. That audit has not been completed. For the previous year, when we completed it, it was clean without any single audit findings. So I can at least tell you the latest available report is clean. So if history repeats itself, we would expect another clean audit from that perspective. In addition to issuing the financial statements, the state also requires a Uniform Financial Report, or UFR for short, and that has also been submitted by the city's deadline and submitted to the state. And then once the Uniform Guidance Single Audit is completed, there will be a completion of a data collection form, and that goes to the federal government to show that you've met your compliance requirements for the single audit. So that due date's not until the end of March, so we're still well within the single audit deadline. This slide here has a high-level summary of the results. We've issued a clean, or what's termed unmodified, opinion on the financial statements, and that would be the best opinion we could give under professional standards. We did not discover any instances of fraud. A financial statement audit, it's not a forensic audit, but we are required to have a healthy skepticism that fraud could happen at any time by anyone. We did not discover any material weaknesses in any of the internal controls that we relied on for the audit, and I have a brief slide, or a slide coming up that I'll show you what we consider those key processes or key internal controls. We've received the full cooperation of management. We had no audit entries that we proposed to management through the audit process, so that just speaks to the quality of the bookkeeping. And it's not like it takes the year-end audit to report, corrected figures or make audit adjustments to get the numbers reported reflectively. That's just shows that management has a good process throughout the year and also at year-end to close the books accurately. And then there's GASB sets the professional standards that we have to follow, and to help keep us gainfully employed, they always like to issue new standards. So there was a new accounting pronouncement that was issued that affects information technology arrangements. So management's fully implemented that standard, and the statements are all up to date on the new pronouncements. This slide here just goes through the key phases of the audit, but this following slide just shows a picture of our risk-based audit approach. And an audit's really designed to be almost a funnel of risk, and every phase of the audit, it's designed to filter out risk so that we get to ultimately to stating whether or not those financial statements are reasonably free of material misstatement. And kind of going through that risk assessment process, we place heavily reliance on internal controls, both the design of the controls as well as whether or not they were operating effectively. And I think it's the next slide, we'll go through those items. So before we get into key processes, we also consider just the environment and totality that the city operates in from a financial perspective. Really at the end of the day, looking at how transactions are recorded in the ledger. And there's 5 interrelated components that we look at in the control environment. And we've concluded that there was an effective environment for the period under control, or for the period under audit. And then the key processes that we look at, you'll see listed there. Treasury includes looking at bank reconciliations being done timely and accurately. There's certain estimates within the financial statements. Management's process for closing the books accurately on a timely basis to get the financial statements issued timely. The expenditure cycle, payroll, revenue, and so on. And we've looked at each one of these areas and concluded that both there's a proper design and the control was operating effectively for the period under audit. To make a determination of whether or not it was operating effectively is based upon sampling transactions and then looking at those transactions to make sure they went through the proper approval channels and ultimately hit the books in the correct account for the correct amounts. Questions so far? Okay. The last few slides, I'm not going to read through each one of these points. I did touch on several of these kind of at the beginning or throughout, but really if there's any issues that we had getting through the audit, like I said, if we didn't have any audit adjustments, we didn't find any fraud. If we had things of that nature, I'd be required to bring that to your attention through the audit process. We had no disagreements with management on any accounting matters. So really nothing of a negative nature that I need to bring to your attention through the audit process. It's probably about as boring of an audit you can get, but normally boring is what you want.
That's what we want.
In an audit process. And lastly, I've included my contact information as well as my other partner. That way, if you do have questions outside of audit season, we make ourselves available to management to answer questions, but also to you all if you have any concerns that you'd like to talk about as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I mean, like I said, the boring is what we're looking for. And I want to take a minute to just congratulate Janice and her team for continuing the tradition of the GFOA certification, or is it a certification or an award?
Award.
Award. I don't want to minimize it. 40. You can take it for granted after getting it 45 years in a row. That would be a natural thing. A human thing would be, another one of these awards. But it is something that we should be proud of every single year, and we should never take it for granted. And I think it's foundational for our relationship with our constituents and how we're reporting to them and being accountable with their resources that we spend to deliver services. So thank you for the work you've done. And Chris, since you guys get to help with financial reporting as well to some degree, maybe you guys had a role, in that too. But we're grateful. We're grateful. Either way, we're grateful.
I don't want to steal any credit.
Thanks for the unmodified report. We're grateful for that too. Questions, comments? Jamil?
Just a quick clarification. So public accounting, public entity accounting is new to me. Is an unmodified opinion analogous to like an unqualified?
Yeah, so it used to be call it unqualified. But
Okay.
The standard language just changes periodically, but now it went from unqualified to unmodified.
Those
It
standards
means-
organizations
It means
are
the
bored.
same thing.
They have to find things to do. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I hope they're not watching. I don't want to antagonize them. Okay. Any other questions or comments? McNulty, if you have any, just you do a raise hand thing here. I don't even, oh, there he is. There's Jim. Okay. I'm not seeing raise hand. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next, okay. So next I'm going to bring up Tom Lonergan Seeger. Are you going to introduce it?
No.
Okay, then you're not going to. Okay, we're as anybody in the political circles knows. Last week, the 2024 Maryland General Assembly came. They came. Whatever, it was gavelled in. The session started, and it's going on until the beginning of April. And we have two members of our lobbying team, Teresa Hessler and Sarah Peters, from Ashlar Government Relations, who would have been here in person, but the roads are going to be icy if they're not already, and whatever. They don't live close by, so we are going to hear from them over the speakers here because they're on Zoom. So I want to ask the tech team. Let's see. I see Sarah. Do I see Teresa? I see Teresa. Okay. Tech team. Well, let's start with Teresa. Teresa, just unmute yourself and go right ahead. Although, here we go. Here we go.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. Would you like me to just jump right in, or did you want me to test Sarah's as well?
It's up to you. However you want to do it, but the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Well, good evening, Mayor Ashman and members of the City Council. As the mayor mentioned, my name is Teresa Hessler with Ashlar Government Relations, and joining me here this evening is another member of the AGR team, Sarah Peters with Hush Blackwell Strategies. We are absolutely appreciative to everyone's flexibility this evening, as we wish that we could be there in person, but certainly want to be safe and aware of the road conditions as we jump into this year's General Assembly. So last Wednesday, the 446th session of the Maryland General Assembly convened. This is the second session for the Moore administration. Governor Moore is expected to have a legislative package of a dozen or so bills dealing with data centers in the state, the shortage of law enforcement officers, housing, and military families, just to name a few. This 90-day session will be framed by tough budget decisions. Tax and fee increases are under consideration, but have not yet landed on the table as an option. The surplus created by the federal pandemic aid has faded, and state leaders now face a structural budget deficit in each of the next 5 years that balloons to more than $2 billion at the end of the current outlook. Also on the agenda for this General Assembly are debates over approaches to juvenile crime, housing, childcare, $3.3 billion in proposed cuts to state transportation aid, and counties clamoring for some relief from budgetary pressures created by the implementation of the blueprint for Maryland's future education reforms. Each year also brings new elected officials to Annapolis and new leadership roles to both chambers and various committees. We do want to note a few leadership changes this year. Delegate Stein from Baltimore County will serve as Speaker Pro Tem, replacing Delegate Sample Hughes, who has served in that position since 2019. Delegate Mark Corman from Montgomery County is the new chair of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. We also have several new delegates in a variety of Montgomery County districts, including one we are all very familiar with, Delegate Ryan Spiegel, District 17, Delegate Greg Wims, District 39, and Delegate Sarah Wolek in District 16. As far as legislation goes, we are off to a slow start in posting bills this year. To date, there have been 386 Senate bills, and 337 House bills posted. These are mainly pre-file legislation and administration bills. Each year, on average, for those not familiar, there are around 4,000 bills that are introduced during the 90-day session. As bills continue to be introduced, our team will continue to review bills, including amendments. In addition, the city has its own priorities, some of which we have discussed in the past, but I want to note and remind those that are familiar where they are and what we will be doing as far as the city of Gaithersburg priorities go. The first priority is the reintroduction of what was House Bill 459, the Public Utilities Street Lighting Equipment Acquisitions and Reporting, also known as the County and Municipal Street Lighting Investment Act. This was sponsored by Delegate Kaufman last year, and it would authorize a local government to purchase their street lighting equipment from the electric company if they choose to do so. During the 2023 legislative session, this bill passed from the House to the Senate, which was the furthest the bill had progressed in its history. It received a Senate hearing, but did not progress out of the committee due to the late nature of the hearing. Delegate Kaufman is committed to reintroducing the bill during the 2024 session and has found Senator Jeff Waldstreicher to cross-file the legislation, giving it higher chances to pass both chambers this year. Another item of priority is publication requirements for charter amendments, annexations, and other public actions. With websites, social media, and other online sources to disseminate information, it's important that public notice requirements reflect modern-day information sharing. Given current requirements to publish notice for these such notices in a general circulation newspaper, we are looking to other obligations that may not be as costly as they currently are, but also more effective in reaching those that need to see these publications. Our team is continuing to meet with stakeholders to acquire data and discuss practical solutions to better address this issue, and we will certainly keep everyone updated as these conversations continue. A third priority we've discussed is commercial vehicle parking in HOAs. Currently, the city of Gaithersburg is facing issues related to parking overflow on various public streets due to overly restrictive parking regulations of certain commercial vehicles adopted by condominium associations and homeowner associations. These restrictions force certain residents that may have a commercial vehicle to not be allowed to park in the area that they live, causing a lot of extra traffic outside of jurisdictional boundaries of the associations. We are continuing to meet with stakeholders for practical solutions, whether this needs to be addressed at a state or county level. And lastly, keeping a very close eye on juvenile justice reform. We will continue to monitor smart reforms to current juvenile justice laws to support safety and accountability. This session, the City of Gaithersburg will also be pursuing legislative bond initiative. Funding for Walder Park and Boher Floor have been submitted by the appropriate district representatives. And lastly, we'll continue to keep the City of Gaithersburg up to date on dates of interest as we move through session. Tomorrow is the final date for the governor to introduce the budget bills. Then the next date of interest will be January 19th, which is the House and Senate bill request guarantee date. In February, we move into bill introduction dates, the Senate bill introduction date being February 5th, and the House bill introduction date being February 9th. And then as hearings continue, we move into March. March 18th is known as crossover, and that is the date that bills in each chamber have to move across the street to the opposite chamber to be guaranteed a hearing. And our last two dates of importance, April 1st, the budget bill has to be passed by both chambers, and finally, April 8th, which is the last day of session and adjournment. And with that, I turn it over to Sarah Peters for any additional comments, and then we will open it up for questions.
Thank you, Teresa, Mayor, members of the council, Sarah Peters for the record. The only thing I would like to add is that today was a very important day where some of the cuts that were discussed in transportation, there was a press announcement that they found some one-year money to fill some of the lots, MARC, and some other transportation priorities, including HUR. So while that doesn't give us answers for future years, it does buy us a bit of time to figure out what the solution may be. And that is all.
Sarah, thanks for adding that on. Can you just give the public here a little background on HUR, what it is?
Sure. Highway user revenues are the funds that come back to the municipalities. Is that a simplified way to put it?
Yeah, that's perfect. We use that money to do our share to help maintain roads in the city and for other transportation related things. Is it relegated just to transportation stuff, or can we put it in general fund? Is it all fungible? Should I just stop talking about this stuff? Okay, I'm getting the sign language from Tanisha. Just drop that. Okay, Teresa and Sarah, thank you very much. So, any questions or comments?
Yeah. One
Go ahead,
question.
Lisa.
Teresa, you good evening to both of you. You mentioned that excuse me, it was a slow start. Any reason why there's a slow start?
I can't pinpoint a reason per se. It's the last 2 years, our Department of Legislative Services have been displaced. And so I think that is attributed to it, but there's no specific reason. So we'll just continue to monitor and add things to a list as they populate.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The only thing I would add is it is tradition that in the first few weeks, there's tends to be quite a few briefings. Just today, for example, was a briefing on the Consolidated Transportation Program. We're seeing briefings on artificial intelligence and the use of that in state government. A few days, if not tomorrow, is on family leave. So definitely a lot of briefings taking up the first few weeks.
Okay.
Neil.
For a state legislature that's been in session for over 400 years, where do they find 4,000 more things to legislate over? You don't actually need to answer that. It's just curious.
Thank you, Neil. Jim, if you have anything, just use the raise hand function. I'll call on you. Anything else, guys? Okay, we appreciate the update and look forward to working with you quite a bit during the session on these and many other matters that will come up inevitably. So thank you, and stay warm.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
All right, so next on our agenda is public comments. This is time the mayor and council like to hear from anybody who'd like to speak on any item tonight, any city-related thing that's not a public hearing item, because our public hearings will come up next, or our consolidated public hearing will come up next. So if you're here to speak about the Stevenson property schematic development plan, hold off, because we're going to get to that next. But if you want to speak on any other topic, we ask that you please come on up. We ask that you state your name, address, or neighborhood for the record. We ask that you keep your comments no more than 3 minutes. The timer will, when we get down to 30 seconds, it'll beep once so you know to start wrapping stuff up. Go right ahead.
Mayor Ashman, City Council, good to be with you this evening. Father Dave Wells from St. Martin of Tours. We have an item coming up later on today. We met with the Historic Committee a few months ago about a demolition application for what we call the Father Meyer House on our property. And the Historic Committee has decided to pursue a historic designation for the house. Just our standpoint on it, it is a very old house. Unfortunately, for the past 12 or 13 years, it's fallen into disrepair to a very significant extent. We met with various contractors to see how much it might cost to refurbish the house. It's well over $1 million to do so. So exorbitant costs. it's become an eyesore, really, right there in 355, and really a danger for. Of course, we have Gaithersburg High School is right there, and students come out, and we've had to shoo people away that kind of are attracted to stuff like that. So it's become a dangerous thing. It's an eyesore, and it's a really exorbitant cost for us to fix up something like that. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of our case as St. Martin's Parish and on our pursuit of demolition for it. So, thank you very much. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Do we have any other testimonies here in the room? If not, I'll look to our Zoom audience. Not seeing anybody. Okay, let me just check Zoom. All right, if you're on Zoom and you would like to testify tonight under public comments, use the raise hand function and I will call on you. We have a bunch of people in the Zoom room. So I'm going to give them a minute and see if any hands go up. Not seeing any? Okay. All right, you guys had your chance. All right, but we do, I'm just kidding. We do have our public hearings coming up momentarily. So that's, thank you for the testimony, Father, and we will move on to our next agenda item, which is our public hearings, and let me just see who we have. And I will bring up the Planning Commission, because it is a joint public hearing with our planning commissioners. Yes.
Did I get the memo?
They didn't. They didn't. Sorry, guys.
Good day.
Hello there.
Welcome all. Jasmine, take it away.
Great. Good evening. So this is a consolidated joint public hearing on schematic development plan application SDP-9558-2023 and abandonment application AB-9653-2023. The subject properties are located adjacent to the Watkins Mill Center development and consist of undeveloped parcels. The applicant's requesting 233 single-family units and also requesting to abandon 7,092 square feet of Exchange Avenue right-of-way. The proposed plan is based on sketch plan application SK-19174-2022, which was approved by the Mayor City Council on June 21st of 2022. The hearing was duly advertised on December 28th and January 4th in the Washington Post and published on the city's website on December 22nd. Present time, there are 103 exhibits in the record files. They are referenced in an exhibit list in the files. The individual exhibits may be reviewed on the city website and at City Hall during regular office hours. Any objections to the receipt of any exhibit should be noted prior to the closing of the record, otherwise they'll be deemed received in evidence. And I will have Chris Mum from Craftmark Homes who will start off the presentation this evening.
Good evening, and thank you, Jasmine, for that introduction. I'm Chris Mullen with Craftmark Homes. Here with me tonight is Scott Wallace, our land use attorney from Miles and Stockbridge, and we're excited to discuss our SDP plan for the Stevenson property. As Jasmine mentioned, we received sketch plan approval on this project about 1.5 years ago, and since then we've been hard at work developing a comprehensive plan. But before I jump into the details, I just wanted to start by telling you a bit about our company. Craftmark Homes has been in business for over 33 years, and we're consistently ranked as one of the region's largest privately held home builders. We've built over 8,000 homes to date, over a quarter of which have been in Montgomery County, including several communities in the city of Gaithersburg. We're a multi-generational family-run company founded by my father, Ken, and with over 3 decades in the DMV area, we have deep roots here, and we're committed to building communities that stand the test of time. Regarding our recent building experience in the city, we recently wrapped up a program of 72 townhomes in Crown Farm, shown in the top left here. We also, before that, built 15 townhomes on the Devlin property, which are now part of the Parklands. And prior to that, we built a community called Summit Crossing off of North Summit Avenue, which you can see on the bottom there. Here you can see just a few more examples of communities we've recently built in the DC area. We're continuously evolving and improving our architectural designs and have built a variety of housing types to meet the needs of different communities. And although we're kind of early in the process to finalize the architecture for this project, later on I'll show you guys some conceptual renderings of what we're proposing for the project so you guys can see what we're thinking. And as I go on, feel free to stop me, ask any questions, and I'll also have a chance at the end to revisit for questions. This aerial shot outlines the SDP property in blue. It covers just over 18 acres. Looking to the north of the site, there's a swath of forested areas, which are mostly city-owned land and provides a natural buffer between our project and 270. Over to the east, there's the Montgomery County Vehicle Impound Lot, and to the northwest, there are the existing Parklands residences. And between us and the Parklands are some large empty parcels, which, as you know, are the future urban core. And lastly, to the south, we've got the MARC station, which is a great amenity for commuters. This slide shows our SDP unit mix exhibit. We're proposing 233 units, a blend of townhouses and 2/2 condos. Our original sketch plan allowed for up to 287 units, but we're going with fewer, 54 less to be exact. On the left, in blue, those are the 2/2 condos. The orange units, which are scattered throughout the interior, are our 20-foot affordable townhomes. And the rest of the units, which are shown in yellow, green, and pink, are all market rate townhomes, ranging in width from 20 to 24 feet wide. 15% of the units on the project will be affordable, as stipulated by the city code. There will be 6 affordable 2/2s and 30 affordable townhomes, as indicated by the black dots. And when I say affordable, I'm talking about half will be MPDUs and half will be workforce housing units. Most of the units are designed with rear load garages and have alleys that run around the back. The only exception are the townhomes along the northern perimeter of the site that are shown in green. Those have front load garages. Primary access to the development is via Exchange Avenue and an extension of Parkview Avenue. And branching off from those existing roads, we're proposing a network of streets, alleys, and sidewalks to provide connectivity for vehicles and pedestrians. Next, let's walk through blocks A and B and see how they compare on the approved sketch, which is shown on the top, and our proposed SDP, which is shown on the bottom. Our sketch plan allowed for up to 35 units in Block A and 67 units in Block B, all townhouses up to 4 stories in height. We're sticking with townhouse use for these blocks, but in Block A, we're proposing 33 units, in Block B, 56 units, up to 3 to 4 stories in height. It's important to note that our sound analysis found that the green units on this block are going to catch some road noise from 270, but we found we can more than adequately mitigate those sound impacts through the use of sound fences in the backyards and also enhanced soundproofing on the back of the units. There's also a road code waiver involved in this block, which I plan to get in more detail later in the presentation. Moving on to blocks C and D, we had sketch plan approval for up to 63 units in Block C and 70 units in Block D, up to 5 stories in height. We are now going for 34 units in Block C and 46 units in Block D, all townhouses. Initially, we thought about mixing in some triplexes or 2/2s on these blocks, but after further analysis, we determined townhomes were the best fit for this area. Now on to Block F. Our sketch plan allowed for up to 68 2/2s, up to 5 stories in height. Our SDP is showing 64 2/2s, which are 4 stories in height. And it's important to note that the units which are closest to the train tracks in this block, and also Block D for that matter, are going to experience noise from the trains. However, based on our sound analysis, we can adequately mitigate those sound impacts through enhancements to the building envelope. And I'll also note it's not our first rodeo with mitigating the train noise. As I mentioned before, we built the 15 units at the Devlin property, which were subject to very similar amounts of train noise, and so we're planning to implement those same tried and true sound mitigation practices on these units. The last block to discuss is Block E. There hasn't been much of a change from our initial sketch plan here. It's still primarily an amenity area. There's a clubhouse, pool, and now we're adding a tot lot and some open space. The train tracks nearby mean that there will be noise and visuals that we need to mitigate. So we're planning a berm with a sound wall on top along the southern edge, which will serve as a noise, visual, and safety shield. This slide shows an internal circulation exhibit. Pedestrian circulation is shown in blue and vehicular circulation is shown in orange. We're setting the site up to have internal streets that'll connect right to Exchange Avenue and Parkview Avenue. And we've made sure there's good pedestrian and vehicular connectivity, not just in the north-south direction, but also in the east-west direction. Taking a look at the bottom left of the slide, you'll see we've maintained the connection to the MARC train, which is very convenient for commuters. And up top, you can see we're providing a path to the city-owned land to the north to make sure that land remains accessible for the city and its residents. Next, let's shift gears and talk about how we'll manage getting traffic in and out of the project. This slide shows our external circulation plan. And first, I'll start with construction traffic. Our plan for construction traffic is to route the majority of it across the at-grade rail crossing along Metropolitan Grove Road. This should keep the majority of our construction traffic off of the neighborhood streets of the Parklands. As for our future residents, they'll be using the existing Parklands Road network to reach Watkins Mill Road, which right now has 2 ways in and out, which are shown by the red arrows. We're proposing to add a third connection, shown here in orange, to help spread the traffic out a little more evenly. Looking ahead, when the urban core gets developed, we'll have a direct shot from our community to Watkins Mill Boulevard. But in the meantime, our traffic impact study, which was submitted along with our SDP, shows that the existing road network of the Parklands is more than capable of handling the extra traffic from our project, even before the urban core is up and running. Now I'd like to talk a bit about our project's green spaces. When it comes to developments like ours, there's a rule that at least 40% of the land must be dedicated to green area. That includes both public and private open spaces and active and passive recreational areas. We're exceeding that requirement by devoting 42.6% to green area, which comes out to nearly 8 acres. We've got plans for several community amenity spaces and a variety of landscaping. And next, I'd like to talk a bit about architecture. Although architecture for this project will not get finalized until final site plan, we've submitted design guidelines with our SDP that are guiding us toward a community that's both well-designed and high quality. The guidelines envision a community with distinct character, yet which is also complementary to the adjacent Parklands community. Here we've got some renderings to show you the kind of architecture you might expect. To start, here's a rendering of the 24-foot townhomes. We're looking at using high-quality materials like brick, stone, and hardy. We're also going for a variety of colors to give each unit its own personality while enhancing the overall aesthetic of the neighborhood. And it's not just about the materials and colors. The details, like the roof lines with their reverse gables and dormers, and also the projecting features like canopies over the front doors and box bays, it's all about adding that extra touch of variety and visual interest. We're aiming for homes that are not only comfortable to live in, but are also visually appealing. Now moving on through these next few slides, we'll be showcasing conceptual renderings of our 20-foot townhomes, 2/2s, and 22-foot townhomes. While there are multiple styles we could go for, each one aims to achieve a unique and high-quality aesthetic. We're looking at diverse color palettes and a variety of materials, all coming together to create a vibrant, distinctive community. Next, I'd like to discuss the Exchange Avenue abandonment, which is being processed concurrently with the SDP. Exchange Avenue is currently a 4-lane road, but after discussing with staff and looking at the area's needs, we all agreed that a 2-lane road makes more sense here. So it's kind of like putting the road on a diet, trimming the pavement down and shrinking the right-of-way from 80 to 62 feet, 62 feet being the city's current standard for a neighborhood street. We're not messing with the road on the side of the existing 2/2s, and nobody's going to lose road access because of this change. Basically, we're just going from 4 travel lanes to 2, keeping parallel parking on both sides, keeping green strips and sidewalks, and converting the abandoned area into green space, which is shown on this slide. Also, as part of our SDP, we're asking for a road code waiver on Street B, which is shown here in blue. The thing is, the city's road code requires parallel parking on both sides of the street. But that doesn't really work where we have driveways for the front-load townhomes. And because we've got very steep slopes behind these units, it's not feasible to build an alley behind them, so they really need to have front-load garages. So to make it all fit, we're thinking of removing the parallel parking on one side of the street, the side with the front-load garage townhomes. This tweak helps our project fit with the surrounding terrain, ensuring everything flows smoothly. There are some other minor tweaks to Street B detailed in the waiver request, but the main variance is the omission of parallel parking on one side of the street. Also, we made sure that there's still an adequate number of street spaces to serve the townhomes on this block. And as an aside, based on our density and the parking requirements in the city code, this project is required to provide 555 parking spaces. We're providing 730, which is 175 more than is required. My point being that in no way does this road code waiver with the omission of parallel parking on one side leave the project short on parking. And lastly, I wanted to bring up a sensitive but crucial part of our project, which is tree removal. We're looking at needing to take down 29 specimen trees, and here's why. The elevation of Exchange Avenue, which is already built and serves the existing Parklands community, is much lower than the majority of our site. And the unfortunate reality is, to make this land conducive to really any development of scale, it's going to be necessary to regrade a good portion of the site, which unfortunately involves taking down some trees. But we're sticking with the city's reforestation guidelines and will be replanting trees as required. And with that, I leave it open for questions and happy to go back to any slides that I had up previously.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I was here, I think, John, some of the planning commission may have been there, Lloyd and John and Matt, when the Devlin property was discussed. I remember the noise being, because it's right by the tracks.
It is,
I remember that being an issue. And to your credit, I have heard from people who've been in those buildings when trains have come by, and it's fine. Apparently, according to them, it's fine. So
it works. It works. Yeah, I was even surprised myself to go there and see what it's like when you close the door. Those windows make a big difference.
Yeah. So that's an aside. So the tree waiver, the last item, obviously a sensitive matter. Do you have some idea about where the replanting would be and what you would be replanting? What's that look like?
Sure. We have a forest conservation plan which details exactly where the trees will be planted. As part of that, we are also came to an agreement with staff to do part of our replanting on an off-site city parcel that was in need of some trees. So while the majority of this replanting will happen on-site, some of it is happening off-site as well.
Okay. Questions, comments? Who'd like to go first? Neil.
So I noticed one big difference from the sketch plan to SDP is the potential height of the buildings from 5 stories down to 4 or lower. Why is that?
The 5 stories was really just to cover our basis for the triplex product. Once we determined that wasn't really feasible, your standard 2/2 product is 4 stories. And that's as tall as we're needing to get with the product that we've proposed.
Okay. Thanks.
Can you talk more about the feasibility aspect on the triplexes?
Sure. One of the big challenges we ran into in the very beginning, as I mentioned, there's a fair amount of slope that we have to take up on the site. And townhouses are much more flexible with regard to taking up grade than triplexes or 2/2s. And that was one of the first concerns that we ran into. And then as we got more into it, just examining the market feasibility, we felt more comfortable with townhomes than triplexes. And so, if one of those two things had been different, it may have shook out different, but that's where we landed.
John Bauer.
On the front load units, how long are the driveways? How much space do you have between the sidewalk or the right-of-way and the garage door?
That's a good question. The driveways are effectively 20 feet long. So you've got 20 feet from the garage to the sidewalk.
Okay. And how wide?
Is the sidewalk?
No, the driveways.
Approximately 18 feet.
Okay. Great.
Was that 20 feet from the garage to the sidewalk or 20 feet from the garage to the curb?
To the sidewalk. And then you've got your standard sidewalk, which I believe is 6 feet in the city. And then you've got an additional green strip between that in the road.
Since we're talking about that area, one of the issues that I had raised in the initial discussion on this was the adjacency to the city park.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if you could, it was hard for me to tell what the buffer is essentially between those houses and the property line. And then if you look at the demarcation of the specimen trees, I note that there are some specimen trees marked on the south property, like off the property, more towards the record yard, but I didn't see any specimen trees marked there. Does that just mean it wasn't surveyed, or there are no specimen trees adjacent to the property in the city park?
Yeah, I'm gonna, Jatika, do you mind? She's our civil engineer.
Come up to the microphone, please.
So if I understand your question correctly, you're saying that there were no specimen trees identified on the city parcel or adjacent on
The city parcel. So you've got basically the city parcel to the 270 side.
Yes.
And then if you look towards the Record or SHA side, you've got the strip properties that are owned by Metropolitan Grove LLC.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's city land there where there's marking of specimen trees on the city property there, but I didn't see any markings on the city property in the park that's on closer to 270. And I didn't know if that meant that there were no specimen trees there or it wasn't surveyed.
I think it was not probably surveyed as part of this project because we surveyed our boundary for this application and anything that is adjacent to the property which could have its impact into the property. So, but we can definitely check on that, but I don't think I think we limited the survey to our property.
Okay, and just to reframe the concern so that we can have a more fulsome discussion is we've noticed in the adjacent properties where I live in the parklands that they are adjacent to parks as well. And there have been some trees that have fallen onto houses. So substantially sized, mature trees. And so I wanted to get a sense of whether there's sufficient buffer between the development and the parkland, and part of that will be, are there in fact large trees that could fall over that are there, or as we're building close to the city's parkland border, what impacts might there be on the park itself? So, questions to be answered later, but I just want to tee up the issue.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Sharon.
Regarding parking, I noticed that it looks like they're provided garage spaces depending on like what unit required spaces. There's just a lot more parking, I think, than would be expected, given the fact that there's like a garage space, like say, if you look at the 20-foot, they have 34 required spaces, and then there's the garage spaces are 34, but then there's also garage spaces of 64. So there seems like there's a lot more parking than, maybe it's expected that people have a lot of cars, I'm not sure.
Well, so each of the townhomes that we are building will have a 2-car garage and a 2-car driveway. And so, does that answer your question?
It does. It just seems like if there's a one, I thought it was a 1-car garage because it looks like there's 34 for the 34 required spaces. So it's a double-car garage, and then there's 2 garage and then 2 pads below. So there's 4 cars.
Every town, so our narrowest townhome is a 20-foot wide townhome, and so that means everything will have 2-car garages. We're not doing 16-footers or front-load 20-footers, which would have a single-car garage. Everything that we're offering will have a 2-car garage, and we're having driveway spaces as well, 2 per unit. Now, the exception is the 2-over-2 condos, which each condominium unit will have 1 garage space and 1 driveway space.
Thanks.
Any other, John?
One more comment. I think it's Block B, the north leg. There's a narrow green strip up between 2 of the rows of townhomes.
Sure.
What's the character of that space? Is that a stormwater piece, or is it usable? What do you envision for that area?
It's a muse. There are townhomes that face it, and so I think we have some walking paths and maybe some park benches in there.
But the grass area itself, is that usable, or is it?
There may be some stormwater management.
Yeah, there is stormwater management as well.
There's some stormwater in there.
There you go. Just repeat it on mic, so because there's people that
Correct.
can't
Yes.
hear.
That long, skinny green strip in Block B does have stormwater management facilities in it.
Rob?
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of questions, but I think dovetailing off of what other people mentioned. So I had a question about that as well. I was wondering if you can walk me through kind of your vision of the usability of that green space, as well as an overall comment that it seemed to me that a lot of the functional green space is being pushed to the periphery, and that towards the core of the property, including the strip that Chairman Bauer just mentioned, it seems rather small. It seems like it curves in on itself, and then it looked like that it did have certain stormwater features on it. So I'd like a little more as to the vision of the property as far as the utility of the green space within the community.
Sure, and I will say I think we predominantly followed our sketch plan approval with regard to the location of the amenity areas and green spaces. And I think you are correct to say that the largest amenity space is at the bottom of the site, closest to the train tracks, and the other amenity spaces are a bit smaller. So I would say your sort of active recreational areas like the pool and the clubhouse and the green space are located towards the bottom of the site. That said, we were careful to make sure we had good pedestrian connectivity so that no matter where you are on the site, it's a short walk down to those active recreational areas. And the other green spaces are more passive. They're open areas with benches and sidewalks and landscaping.
Sorry, one more question. So is there anything driving the contour of that strip we were just talking about?
Are you talking about the open space in Block B?
Correct.
Sure. It's just the shape of the townhouse buildings that surround it. I guess is my best answer. I could look back into the origin of why it was shaped that way and get back to you at our next meeting with more detail, I think.
Do one more. I'm sorry. One more.
Go ahead.
Clarify.
Absolutely.
The neighborhood itself, the brand, this proposed neighborhood. Do you envision this being integrated with the rest of? We call it Parklands or Watkins Mill West. What's the?
Parklands.
Okay. I'm still Watkins Mill West in my head from way back. Casey West. Right. Sorry about that. Anyway, integrated with the HOA, the amenities, the kind of neighborhood fabric, or is this really feeling like a standalone?
It would have a standalone HOA with standalone amenities.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Go ahead, Jamil.
What's your perspective, following up on that, what's your perspective on sort of amenity collaboration? There's some other communities in the Giddisburg, like Kentland, Lakelands, that are separate, but they give each other privileges so they can...
We'd be open to discussion on it. We received guidance early on, I think both from the neighborhood and from staff, that we really should have our own amenities. I didn't think there was appetite from the neighboring neighborhood to share their amenities, but we are open to discussions if, obviously if things make sense for both sides and there's interest, we'd be happy to talk.
Matt, go ahead.
You guys are done? I think to the council's point, we're going to be really careful about both the larger green space and how it's designed, how it's programmed, as well as some of the thinner spaces. You got some really squeezed, and thank you. I know we requested those access, north to south. I guess it's east to west.
I think that was your comment, if I recall.
Probably, but those kind of pedestrian environments, I'm not personally as concerned about the width of them as I am about how careful we are about programming them. So if it's got great pedestrian pieces, if it's not just a straight shot next to a brick wall with a stormwater recess next to it. If it's something more than that, if it's an enjoyable walk, then it's a home run. So that's what I think we're going to be looking for next. And then just a sort of technical question, maybe for Jasmine. It's really on the Park View side, where the staff's asking to push back out the right of way, right? The city piece from 50 feet to match up with the more eastern corner of Park View, right?
Which talking about at the end of our staff report where staff noted reducing or
increasing from 50 to 60, right? That right away that sits on Parkview.
Yeah. So currently,
I don't know if we can zoom in on it.
Site plan. So at the bottom, they have it going 2 lanes and then up to 4. Staff of Public Works had looked at it and realized that it's not necessary to go from a 2 to 4. Just make it 2. Put parking on both sides of the road, and look at possibly eliminating that little island right up at is it Parkview and Urban to make that more accessible.
Yeah, that's
right now staff's looking at it. We don't think that island's needed for traffic movement.
Is there an objection to that, or haven't looked into it yet?
We're open to it. From the developer's point of view, the tricky thing is that Parkview was included on an approved SDP for the urban core. Like most things of this nature, we're following staff's direction, but at the same time, we feel that this isn't really part of it's already part of an approved SDP. So what can we do to change it? Can we take it from 4 lanes to 2? I think there needs to be collaboration with the developers of the urban core on that, and a discussion has been started. I think the next step is for a DPW is going to draw up what it would actually look like to change the whole thing to 2 lanes and continue discussions from there. But it's been an ongoing dialogue.
That's great.
I want to tech team, if you could bring up Jim McNulty, because I see he's got his hand up. I want to give him a chance to ask a question. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Apologies for not being able to be there in person. I did have some of the same questions regarding the green space and how you're arriving at 40%. It did seem like, to Councilmember Wu's point, that a lot of it was pushed out to the side, and that a lot of the actual open space is really the roads and the sidewalks, counting towards that 40%. That was one observation. Another was on packet page 176. You highlight the potential adding of an entryway to Watkins Mill on the other side of the urban core, but not having that road through their property. Obviously, the sketch plan was anticipating connection through that property, as well as the potential for construction traffic being able to go through that property. From what I'm seeing here, everything is going to be coming over the tracks on Metropolitan Grove. Did you have any conversations with the other property owner about at least getting a construction road through the urban core so that trucks could come directly off of 270 to Watkins Mill and then through the urban core and not have to? We had residents raise concern from the apartments on Metropolitan Grove about the amount of construction traffic coming on a road that really isn't designed for that much traffic.
Sure. So if I understand the question, is it specifically why isn't our construction traffic crossing the vacant parcels of the urban core to get out to Watkins Mill?
It's both that and the fact that all of the traffic from the neighborhood would have to basically go through one road, or possibly going up and around if folks are trying to get south instead of going to 270.
So the second part is about our future residents, then, not just the construction traffic.
Correct.
Sure. And so, maybe I'll address the traffic from our future residents first. I think everybody agrees that connectivity to Watkins Mill will be better once the future urban core is developed. It will really just be a straight shot. Unfortunately, this is a separate development from the urban core, and we just don't have any control as to when that road through the urban core gets built. And so we looked at what can we do that's in our control. That connection that you mentioned that we're adding across Town Center Boulevard, that was already dedicated right away to the city, and it has its site plan final approved. And so that was one thing that we could just step up and build right now. Unfortunately, there's no portion of the urban core that's feasible for us to do that and build a road all the way through. That really needs to be built at the time that they build the buildings there. The other thing that was in our control is to do a traffic analysis just to confirm that the existing road networks of the parklands is adequate to handle the construction traffic of our community. I'm sorry, the resident traffic from our community until such time as the urban core is built. And we did that and confirmed it was true. We would like to see the urban core get built before or concurrently with our project, but we just can't control it. The next question about the construction traffic, why does it have to go across the CSX tracks and why can't it cross the urban core? That's something we can talk to the developer about. I think we would be hesitant to commit to bringing all of our traffic across that parcel because we don't know what exactly is going to be going on development-wise on the urban core, and if it's feasible. There could be something happening on that site, a regrading, et cetera, that prevents our construction vehicles from crossing it, and so we would hate to be in a situation where we proffered that's what we were going to do. But we would be happy to have a conversation with the owners of that piece and see what's possible.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I saw, and I don't have the page in front of me, that you highlight the potential of connecting your roads to the Metropolitan Grove in the future. And at the far right side of the property, would you anticipate that it would have to maybe parallel there, or how are you envisioning separation there?
So just to clarify, are we talking about maintaining connectivity from our site to Metropolitan Grove Road, which is like a 15-foot public right-of-way over on the right side of the screen here?
Yes, exactly.
So the way that we're not envisioning that connection ever happening when we develop the site, but we don't control these 3 parcels over here. They're controlled by a separate entity, and staff wanted to make sure that we maintained connectivity. So what we did is we took what will be public right-of-way, which is this public street right here, and we pushed it right up against the property line, so it's contiguous with the right-of-way of Metropolitan Grove Road.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll go to Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the work that you're doing to mute or quiet down the train noise for the homeowners. With the townhouses and you use the term sound fence, a sound fence. Have you done that in other properties? And aesthetically, what are we looking at in height?
Sure. It's a good question. And so the first sound fence that I can recall building at Craftmark is actually on the Devlin property. And so there's a few different ways you can do it. On the Devlin property, we used a board-on-board pressure-treated design with actually an air cavity in the middle. It looks just like a normal privacy fence. Now, as to what our sound study, which was done by a third party called Phoenix, showed that there are a few different ways you can achieve that necessary sound mitigation through fence construction. You could do a board-on-board, fence design like I described at Devlin's. You could do, they make other, vinyl or composite materials, or you could do something like concrete. Right now, we're leaving the door open to various materials to kind of see what looks best aesthetically and what's most cost effective when the time comes. And the height varies. And I could get back to you at the next meeting with the exact heights because I don't recall, but our sound study shows behind certain buildings it's 10 feet, behind other buildings it's 11 feet. And we were careful to make sure that it's pushed far enough back from the units and it's far enough downhill that it's not overly imposing when you're standing in one of those backyards.
Thank you.
Lloyd?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, there is no accessibility to the current development to the MARC station. You have to, in order to get to the MARC station, you have to go around and come back around up through the developed parcel on the other side of Block A. There is no other accessibility right now for the currently developed parkland.
Isn't there an asphalt path that goes?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Then what would be the accessibility from your property to the MARC station for all residents?
Sure. Let me pull up the slide that best shows that. So there would be a public sidewalk shown here in blue that runs across the front of our 2/2 condos, and then from there you cross the public alley and get down to the MARC station that way. So it's in a very similar location to that asphalt path that exists now. It's just going to be a sidewalk built to city standards. So it really will be an actual upgrade, I think, for folks that are walking from the existing Parklands residences to the train.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Phil and then Rob.
All right. Similar, following up on the question that Councilmember McNulty asked, and this may be more for staff, as Public Works and Emergency Services looked at this from the standpoint of, assuming we all like to think that the urban core will happen simultaneously or soon, assuming it doesn't, and this project gets completed, it looks to me like the one way in, one way out would be something that emergency services or others would be concerned about, that there's, if something happens on that, 200-foot section of roadway, you've got all of these residents who can't get in and out, and difficulty for emergency services to get in. Has that been discussed at all? I mean, because that's, as a temporary condition, that's fine, but nobody knows how temporary that's going to be.
Yeah. So the plans have been routed to the fire marshal, and they looked at all this, and they think there's adequate access to the neighborhood.
Okay,
I
Brock.
mean, what's the marshal's solution, as Phil just articulated, if that road gets blocked? How do they egress, ingress?
So we didn't actually, this was not a comment brought before us, but we've talked about this internally and noticed that, there is a connection through Blue Flax Place to sort of cut around the corner. So it really depends on where the proposed road blockage would be. But, this does, from Exchange Avenue up to this section of Parkview, provide a bit more connectivity.
Rob, did you have another
Yeah,
question?
I have a few. So Block A, the buildings that are closest to the urban core and then the train, I couldn't tell where the proposed sound walls end around the property. It didn't look like they extended around those buildings.
Just to clarify, we're talking about the sound walls that are in front of the train track.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or blocking the sound that would ultimately be coming towards those from the operation of the train.
Sure. It effectively runs along the southern property line. Maybe at the next meeting I can bring an exhibit that highlights the exact location of it, because I could show you with my cursor, but I'm afraid I'd be a little bit off.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll
Yeah.
bring up you can go ahead. I'll bring up the exhibit.
Okay. Yeah, and as Jasmine does that, I'll just note that the Devlin property, when it came before us, was controversial. Ultimately, we discussed it, and I think it was a 3-2 vote. And so the data, I think, showing that in fact adequate noise mitigation that was a concern then is feasible.
Sure. It certainly made us more comfortable with this project, knowing that we have happy customers at that project, and just walking the units ourselves after they were built.
Okay.
is
And
meaningful.
then question to staff, for Building 1 and Building 6 of Block A, are there any other residential units in the city that are that close to a train track? Doesn't need to be answered now, but, just curious.
All right. Any other questions?
So getting back to Block E, the amenities, there's a pool, there's a tot lot, and there's a lot of open space, a lot of green space. Is that going to be fenced in?
Well, actually, I can kind of hit two birds with one stone. The berm/sound wall. You guys can see all the clustered grading lines around the bottom of the screen here. That's the berm, and along the middle of it is the sound fence. And so, obviously, safety in front of the train tracks is a big concern for us. And so, this is a 10-foot berm with a 10-foot wall on top. So you're not going to have any kids that are going to be able to run over to the train tracks. So it not fenced in, obviously, on the townhome side, other than around the swimming pool, what's required.
All right. This is a public hearing.
Sorry.
Oh, we got another
Mr.
question.
Mayor.
Okay.
I apologize.
I do want to get to the public at some point.
You should, and I'll be real quick. I think the only in the key lot plan, the only ones I think that we may have missed are sides for the 11-12 and the 9-10 2/2s as Street B3 comes into them. I think there's a visual tunnel there. If and when the commercial core ever gets built, you'll see that side from a good ways away. So I think that's not a rear, but thank you.
We will take a look.
All right. I think we're at that point. So this is the time the Mayor and Council and Planning Commission would love to hear from anybody who wants to testify on this matter. We ask that you state your name and address or neighborhood for the record. Keep your comments no more than 3 minutes. If you have more than 3 minutes worth of material to deliver, feel free to use the 3 minutes and send us the rest in writing. It'll be considered just the same. And go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Lynn Tucker. I am a resident of the Parklands. My husband and I have lived there for over 10 years. We're original owners. I'm also a realtor coming up on my 20th year of residential real estate sales. And I can tell you from experience that Craftmark has a good reputation in the industry. I think they build a good product, and they've proven that they're good community members when it comes to managing the construction phase and making sure that it doesn't have a significant impact on the community. But I do have some concerns about the project. The original plan for Watkins Mill Town Center consisted of residential, retail, and office space. And it also included adequate access roads to support the anticipated traffic so that the traffic didn't have to drive through the parklands in order to gain access to the urban center. What the current proposal does is it extracts a portion of the residential component of the original Watkins Mill Town Center. It quadruples the number of units that are being built, but it doesn't provide any additional access directly to the new community. What that means is, and this is demonstrated well on that packet, page 176, all traffic is going to have to drive through the parklands. I know that it was mentioned that there was a study done that showed that there was adequate capacity within the Parklands neighborhood to support the additional traffic. I want to say first that that was not the original traffic plan. And second, I want to point out that all of the traffic will have to be funneled to the 300 block of Urban Avenue and required to turn right onto that 400 block of Parkview Avenue. That's a small section that is going to experience an over 400% increase in traffic. The intersection of Urban and Parkview will be the only way to access the new community. And if this intersection is blocked, as it was mentioned before, no emergency vehicles will get through. I know that I heard Blue Flax Place was being considered, but Blue Flax Place is private property. That's not public road. There's a concrete triangle at this intersection that was also mentioned. That triangle is designed to prevent traffic from going through the neighborhood to get to the urban center, which is going to be now the new Craftmark community. This intersection forces all southbound Parkview traffic to turn onto Urban because the original plan was intended to prevent urban center traffic from driving through the parklands. So to summarize very quickly, Parklands is going to see a dramatic increase in traffic through the community, which wasn't part of the original plan. And there's only one access point into and out of this community. I feel that that's a big safety concern. If that intersection is blocked, there's no possible way for emergency vehicles to get to those 233 families.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other testimonies in the room? Not seeing any. Let me just go. I see one hand raised on Zoom already. Actually, that hand disappeared. If there's anybody on Zoom who'd like to testify regarding this project, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you. Looks like we have no takers. So, Chris, I wanted to give you a chance to address some of the concerns, which I don't want to put you on the spot. You can address them here, or you can address them in writing, give it some thought, but I want to give you an opportunity to respond if you like.
I appreciate the opportunity. I agree that traffic will be better once the urban core is built. However, as I already stated, the traffic analysis does show that the Parklands roads are able to safely handle the additional trips. We're not happy about adding trips, but so long as the roads are adequate, we're comfortable with it. And with regard to the life and safety matters that were addressed, as Jasmine mentioned, this was reviewed by the proper channels in the city, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay, any further questions or comments here from the dais? Okay, you want to go to the recommendations?
All right, staff recommends that the planning commission hold, and by the way, this is for both the STP and the tree waiver, correct?
It's
we do
for-
separate?
You mean for the record?
Right.
It's for all, the SDP, the abandonment and.
Or abandonment, excuse me, abandonment and the STP.
And the road
At the same time, or do you need two motions?
Yep.
Well, do you need two motions or one motion?
Just one motion.
Okay, got it.
One motion, okay. The staff recommends the planning commission hold their record open until 5 p.m. on February 15th. That's 30 days with a recommendation to the mayor and city council on February 25th. And this is both for the STP hearing and the abandonment.
So moved.
Pardon me? Okay, so for the record, I misspoke. It's for recommendation of the mayor and city council on February 21st. Okay.
So moved now.
Second?
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Mr. Mayor, take it away, please.
Okay. So our recommendation is that we hold our record open until 5 p.m. on February 28th with anticipated policy discussion on March 18th. What's the pleasure of the council?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that carries 5-0. So we thank you all very much. And so for anybody here in the audience, anybody watching, did we just have an issue? Is there an issue we should be aware of? Jasmine?
Was one of those dates a Saturday?
Yes, it's one of these is Saturday.
Yes, I believe the chair of the planning commission said their recommendation meeting would be February 24th. That's a Saturday.
I think it's
Corrected to.
Yeah.
Our recommendation to the mayor and city council will be on February 21st.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I probably slurred it and said it wrong, but
I heard 21st.
Okay,
so.
apologize for that.
Anybody watching, anybody interested in this, our record is open until March 18th. We're delighted to hear from you. We'll consider any oral testimony or written testimony. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, let me just go to what's next on our agenda, which is from the mayor and city council. Okay.
Let's go, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you all very much, planning commissioners. Stay warm, please.
Well dressed and warm.
I'm going to read the other one. Yes, please read. Okay. We're going to start from the mayor and council. We'll start with council member Jamil Hernandez.
All right. Mr. Mayor, notice is given to the general public that members of the mayor and city council will participate in a tour hosted by the Transportation Committee on January 25th at 7 p.m. The tour will take place at the Montgomery County Public Safety Communications Center at 1300 Quince Orchard Boulevard in Gettysburg, Maryland, at the corner of Quince Orchard Road and Route 120 or Maryland 124 and Quince Orchard Boulevard. It will include the Transportation Management, 911, and Emergency Operations Center. The tour is open to the public on a first-come, first-served basis, and space is limited. Pre-registration is required, and transportation will not be provided. Please contact project engineer Mark Kiley by the close of business on Wednesday, January 24th at 240-805-1322 for registration or more information.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing to report.
Wow, too quick. Okay, you didn't even give me a chance to tell Neil. I wanted him to do the other announcement, which is the committee vacancies. So whatever you want to say, and then do the committee vacancies.
All right, that's fine. So first of all, I'd like to just comment on the announcement that Jamil just made. We did this tour a number of years ago. I think most of us on the council weren't members yet, but it's a really interesting tour, and I highly recommend it to members of the public. Not only the 911 call center, it's also the building where they control all the traffic signals and monitor everything that goes on in the roads in the city. So, really interesting tour, and right here in the middle of Gaithersburg. All right. Let me read this announcement. The mayor and council are seeking members to serve on a number of city boards, commissions, and committees. Joining is a way to get involved and help your community. The following have vacancies, and there's a long list now. Just be ready. The Animal Control Board has openings for 1 veterinary representative and 1 alternate. The Board of Supervisors of Elections has openings for a full member. The Commission on Landlord-Tenant Affairs has 1 alternate public at large. Do the ones that don't have anything have no openings? Is that what that's trying to tell us?
No, they all have vacancies.
They all have vacancies. Okay, so the vacancies on the Community Advisory Committee, the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee. Shocked to read this one, the Economic and Business Development Committee. That's a tough one to get into. The Educational Enrichment Committee, the Environmental Affairs Committee, the Ethics Commission has one alternate. The Gaithersburg Book Festival Committee, the Gaithersburg Parks, Arts and Recreation Corporation, otherwise known as G-Park, the Multicultural Affairs Committee, the Old Town Advisory Committee, the Planning Commission, there's an opening for one alternate, the Police Advisory Committee, the Senior Advisory Committee, and the Transportation Committee. If you are interested in serving in any of the above, and as the mayor said, it's a great way to learn about how things work in the city and to participate, please send a letter of interest and a resume to Mayor and City Council, 31 South Summit Avenue, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20877, or via email to cityhall@gaithersburgmd.gov. For more information and official announcements, please visit the city's website at www.gaithersburgmd.gov or contact the city manager's office at 301-258-6310. So last week, many of us attended the opening reception in Annapolis, where the MML members, including ourselves and many of the state delegation, got together to talk and for us to let them know what our preferences are. And it was a great event as always, and we had some really good conversations. I'd also like to say that you've probably heard that the governor had to cut $3.3 billion out of the state transportation budget. As of today, there 100-some million of it was restored. But as they say, never let a good crisis go to waste. There are a number of us who have been working on transportation for a long time who are working on getting some fixes in place that I know I've admired some of what Virginia has been doing for a long time, and now there's a bill being drafted by our former colleague who is, I believe, watching this very evening, Ryan Spiegel, to put a mechanism in place to provide additional transportation funding that is dedicated to relieving congestion, which would be a relief. So I've had a number of meetings with members of our own delegation and folks in Frederick County as well as other jurisdictions, and I'm hopeful that there'll be some momentum and that we'll get ourselves moving at some point. So stay tuned. I'm sure you'll hear more from me as we go forward, whether you like it or not. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. By my count, there's just 3 commissions, boards, or committees that don't have vacancies. Wondering if Delegate Spiegel, you no longer have a conflict of interest, would want to join one of them. Nothing further. Thank you.
Interesting. We'll see how that reads in the minutes. A couple of things, just a couple of things. First, I wanted to thank staff for participating in our Martin Luther King Day event in partnership with Manna Food Center, which we hosted yesterday at the Robertson Park Youth Center. Some of our students in the Gaithersburg Student Union put together a great art display, and they prepared food, and we ended up hosting a really meaningful panel discussion about ending childhood hunger, and I think it went over really well. So please convey our deep gratitude to staff for, and it was kind of a last minute thing. I'm on the Manna Advocacy Task Force, and I can tell you they didn't start planning this thing until about a month ago. And it's hard to plan an event in a month. So our staff did a lot of heavy lifting on this. So and Maureen and her team, everybody deserves credit. Second thing is, save the date for Friday, February 9th. The Gaithersburg Book Festival is part of our special 15th year anniversary year. We're hosting a special event with former U.S. Poet Laureate Billy Collins, who's an amazing presenter. You think poetry, it's not like we're just going to read a bunch of T.S. Eliot and no one's going to understand anything. This guy's very accessible, he's very funny, he's very witty, and brilliant. So it is a free event, but it's gonna be ticketed. We're gonna doing it at Asbury, Roseboro Theater, and seats are limited, so we're ticketing it, but the tickets are free, and they will be available the day of the event as of 10 a.m. on February 9th. And you can go to the Book Festival website sometime in the next couple of days, and you will actually have the link to acquire those tickets. So GaithersburgBookFestival.org for all the information. And we're starting, by the way, to publicize the authors that will be at the May 18th Gaithersburg Book Festival, so you might want to take a look at that too. So join us. I have a formal announcement about upcoming sessions. So we will have a joint work session with the Board of Supervisors of Elections on Monday, January 22nd, 7:30 p.m. at City Hall. You can participate in person or via Zoom, just like today, and we will receive a debrief of the 2023 city election. We will also conduct a hybrid work session on Monday, January 29th at City Hall to receive training on harassment, ethics, and open meetings. And then the next regular meeting of the Mayor and Council will be Monday, February 5th. So with that, I will turn it from the City Manager, Tanisha.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing to report, but I did want to congratulate our snow team on an incredible job.
Yes.
It's always easy to tell where the city limits are, city of Gaithersburg, when it snows, because they do an amazing job. So plows finally got some action after being painted several years ago and not having any blemishes on them. And so I know the team was happy to be able to get out and serve the community in this way, because it's one of the many ways we shine, and certainly they did a great job. So
I heard them in my neighborhood at 4:45 a.m.
Yeah.
They're working.
They're working.
Around the clock. Thank you, Tanisha. Next, we're going to have Economic Development Update, Tom Lonergan-Seeger.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll put on two hats tonight, Economic Development and my acting Directorship of Community and Neighborhood Housing Services by mentioning VITA at Casey Community Center. In partnership with Montgomery County Community Action Agency, the Community Services Division is hosting VITA, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Tax Preparation Program at the Casey Community Center. Residents with household incomes under $64,000 can have their 23 tax returns prepared at no cost by trained VITA volunteers. VITA, as you may know, is a national initiative of the IRS designed to provide free tax preparation for underserved individuals through local partners. They help low to moderate income individuals, including persons with disabilities, limited English, and the elderly file taxes each year. Gaithersburg's site is one of several community action VITA sites in the county. Volunteers are knowledgeable about tax credits for low and moderate income families, such as the EITC. Last year, the Casey site alone filed over 400 tax returns. Individuals and families claimed over $700,000 in state and federal refunds, plus nearly $550,000 in federal, state, and county earned income tax credits. Gaithersburg VITA site it opens January 22nd, I apologize, and serves people on Mondays from 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. It is by appointment only and can be made at montgomerycountymd.gov/cashback. That's all I got.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
We are going to move on to ordinances, resolutions, and regulations. And I do want to just publicly apologize to Jim McNulty because I forgot to call on him in front of the mayor and council. But he says it's all good. But I am feeling terrible about that. Okay, Rob.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council, and the computer has frozen. I wanted to show the graphic. Before you this evening is a resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a 7th amendment to the X-159 annexation agreement, and I have it up now. In short, are we listening?
It's coming.
Okay.
Here we go.
There we go. Okay. In short, in December of 2022, we did the 6th Amendment, and it really allowed Stonebridge to build more life science center in Washingtonia North, which is something we always wanted to pursue. The main crux was to allow a phase 3, which you see here. The original X-159 annexation agreement annexation plan counted as sketch plan. So there's an overall density cap across all of Washingtonian Rio. So each parcel has an allocation of allowable density. What occurred was, in order to build phase 3, Stonebridge had to purchase from parcel J, the suites, some excess density to complete that. As part of the Sixth Amendment, one of the triggers was that sale had to be completed by what's going to turn out to be June 2024. Obviously, this was 2 years ago. Economics have changed. I can let you know phase 2 has received all of its approvals, is actually in for permits, but it's really not moving forward. So essentially, Stonebridge needed phase 2 to be done to sort of raise capital, have capital to complete the purchase. They have spoken with Summerhill Suites, I believe it is, and everybody's amenable to extending this out. So really, this annexation agreement amendment is only to allow, sort of dump that July 2024 timeframe and push it out. Because nobody really knows when it's going to occur, is being proposed as a 20-year sunset, but it's not going to go 20 years. Stonebridge wants phase 3 to happen. Summerhill Suites is amenable to the sale. I mean, they're not expanding. They don't need the density that's there. So that, in a nutshell, is really what's coming before you. There's no real substantive other elements. It just reaffirms that the annexation plan counts as sketch plan because this is all MXD zoned. But it really is just allowing the flexibility to let, once the market stabilize, allow this purchase to go through and then allow Stonebridge to move forward with phase 3. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rob. This seems like house cleaning to me, but go ahead.
I talked myself into believing that it's the 7th Amendment, the last amendment they can do.
No, there's no limits.
Okay.
In fact, I think AstraZeneca and that whole Quince Orchard area has like 8.
Okay. I don't know why. I read this and in my head, that was back to me. And
you're like, they better make it a great amendment.
So after the 7th Amendment, you actually have to stretch.
Okay. All right.
They stopped selling beer.
If there's no questions, does someone want to move the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Jim, you with us? You voting on this one?
I think he's upset that you didn't follow.
Jim, if you can hear us and you're accessible, unmute and just vote one way or another on this, aye or nay. Okay, he must be away from the mic. Okay, so we're just going to call this a 4-0 vote, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, not like an abstention, right? Just 4 people participated and they all voted aye. Okay. All right, thank you, Rob. Okay, next. Sam Copeland. Here we are with 110 South Frederick Avenue and the question of whether to engage in a historic designation exercise.
Correct. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Welcome.
All right. So, as previously discussed, staff's before you this evening from the HDC's petition to begin the designation process for 110 South Frederick Avenue. And just so we're all clear, this is to confirm if the mayor and city council want to continue with the process of historic designation or not. The subject property, as shown on the screen, is located at 110 South Frederick Avenue. It's zoned R90, which is medium density residential. The applicant, St. Martin's, seeks to raise the building because the vacant building is in disrepair and attracts vagrants, so they would like to demolish it. They provide an estimate that would cost upward of up to, or approximately 2.2 million. Could be lower, could be higher. So talking about the application background, the application was submitted to the city on October 16th, 2023. It's been given demolition permit number DEMO-31922-2023. On November 29th, 2023, the HDC finds the property meets criteria under section 24.226 and that reasonable probability exists to designate. Also, they direct the city manager to withhold issuance of the demo permit for 6 months. On December 20th, 2023, the HDC approved a resolution to petition the mayor and city council to initiate the historic designation process. This resolution has been included in tonight's packet as exhibit number 1. So I'll just go through a brief history of the property. The Lodge family were the first owners after 1880 when John T. DeSellum, the longtime owner of Summit Hall, subdivided his land on the west side of South Frederick Avenue into 4-acre parcels between Diamond Avenue and Summit Avenue. Large homes were built on each of the lots. The first lots were sold to Eliza and Philemon Smith and James and Alice Lodge. The lots were annexed into Gaithersburg town limits in 1888. And you can actually see these lots here on the map of 1894. I've highlighted the subject property, which you can see DeSellum, you can see Frederick, and it was owned by the Lodge family. So in 1883, the Lodges built what is today 110 South Frederick Avenue, and they named it Ardmore. James was an influential and moral and thought leader in the community. Going forward to November 1907, James Lodge passed away, and Alice followed on February 4th, 1919. They both are buried in the Darnestown Presbyterian Church Cemetery, and as seen here on the screen, James' obituary on the front side of the Washington Star newspaper was preserved, and here it is now. So let's talk about the property. As you can see here, this is a 2.5-story folk Victorian style building. It's measuring 4,320 square feet and is located on a 3.61 acre parcel. The property core, or the original core of this house, has a brick foundation, and some of the original wood sash windows are paired with metal storm windows. Ornamentation includes bays on the front and left side elevations, cornices, barge boards, wood corner boards, wood window surrounds, and brackets. So the front elevation here is 4 bays wide, including the westernmost bay that has a front-facing projecting gable. A shed roof dormer on the side-facing gable was added at an unknown date and then enclosed. The 1-story covered porch was entirely rebuilt within the past 20 years. And this porch railing and decorative spindles are made of vinyl. A small porch at the southeast corner was enclosed pre-1960, and a new porch roof was added. So circa around 1960, the new porch was also enclosed with a concrete foundation poured and a metal canopy was added. Here you can see the left elevation. There you can see the small addition was added here on the left side. Here is the rear where you can see the cellar and the chimney. And this is the right elevation. This is just a detail of the front projecting bay, showing some of the work of the house. So during the HDC meetings, they determined that the following designation criteria has been met. The first one has character, interest, or value as part of the development, heritage, or cultural characteristic of the city, county, state, or nation. So the HDC believes that this is an important part of Gaithersburg development because 110 South Frederick Avenue was built in 1883. This is important because a lot of development occurred in 1873, 10 years prior, with the arrival of the B&O Railroad to Gaithersburg. The Catholic Church bought the property circa 1925, which shows the diversifying religious offerings of the early 20th century. The next one is identified with a person or a group of persons who influence society. The HCC believes that there are 3 groups of people associated with the structure that influence society. The first, as we know, is James L. Lodge, who was an esteemed local resident and had status as both a faith leader and an intellectual. His writings for the Waverly Literary Club appeared in the Montgomery Sentinel, so his words reached readers throughout Montgomery County. From 1926 to 1973, the property was home to dozens of members of the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur, who taught at St. Martin's Catholic School. And then finally, in more recent years, Father Meyer, the namesake of the building, lived in the home from 1975 to 1993. He oversaw the church's post-war transformation from a rural community to a parish of 3,500 people, and is particularly memorable for his role in building the current sanctuary. The last item on this screen exemplifies the cultural, economic, social, political, or historic heritage of the city and its communities. The HGC notes that James Lodge was a notable person who relocated to Gaithersburg and built the home with his family on a large lot carved from the Summit Hall estate. His arrival reflects Gaithersburg's growing prestige after the railroad's arrival as the city experienced rapid growth. And on this slide, you see the last four that the HDC believes deems as historic. The first one being embodies the distinctive characteristic of a type, period, or method of construction. The HDC believes that this is met by the style, which is folk Victorian. It's a residential construction of the Victorian era in small town Maryland. There have been some alterations, but it is largely intact with its character, defining form, brackets, cornices, and windows. The next one possesses high artistic values. The building's architectural design, particularly its large-scale bays and detailed brackets and cornices, do exude high artistic value when compared to similarly styled buildings in Gaithersburg at this time period. The second to last one represents an established and familiar visual feature of the neighborhood, community, or city due to its singular characteristic or landscape. The HDC said this was meant based on the lot itself. The building's expansive lot is an established visual feature. It is unique that the building is set back 400 feet from South Frederick Avenue, and it is the last remaining building from its period to maintain its setback from the thoroughfare. In addition, the property is among the three this building, I should say, is among the three large residential lots built along South Frederick Avenue, and the property that contains 110 South Frederick Avenue is the only remaining in its current configuration. And then finally, we have the last criteria, embodies design, settings, materials, workmanship, and ambiance to the city's sense of time, place, and historic development. The HCC believes this is met because it's a good example of Victorian-era residential architecture. It's remained much of its original appearance and its characteristic architectural components. The building remains on its original large lot and has maintained the same viewshed to South Frederick Avenue as it has for the past 140 years. So these are some of the historic designation implications that are before you this evening. If it were to be designated, which would be the process we'll talk about later, there are four things to consider. The first is that historic area work permits are required for exterior alterations. Changes must comply with the city code and design guideline requirements. The second is that the building itself can only be demolished if the property impedes major improvement program, the owner proves retention causes undue economic hardship, or retention is not in the best interest of the majority. The third is that it protects a tangible reminder of the past and honors the city's heritage. And the final is that it is eligible for local historic preservation tax credits, potentially eligible for state and federal credits. So essentially there are two options before you this evening. And just as a reminder, this is the HCC has petitioned the designation process for this property. These are the two options that we have this evening. Option one is that council accepts HCC's petition to initiate historic designation. There would be a triple public hearing among the mayor and city council, planning commission, and HDC. The HDC has a recommendation, planning commission has a recommendation, and then council has final action. The second option is that the council denies the HDC's petition to initiate historic designation, and therefore the demo permit would essentially be able to be issued. So that is it. I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Sam. Before we get started with this question, I know Councilmember McNulty has a disclaimer he'd like to give us. Jim, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When this project came across our desks, I reached out to City Attorney Board because I attend church at St. Martin's and I wanted to get guidance from her. And I'm going to read to you from her email. Since you have no employment or financial interest in the parish, it is not a conflict of interest under Section 7-4 of the City Code for you to participate in this matter. So based on that guidance, I will be participating in the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you. So the question before us, obviously, as Sam has summarized, is not whether or not we're designating, but whether or not there's enough here in this petition to initiate a process in which we would consider it. And I'm going to open it up to council members and see where you guys are on this.
Here's a question. I have a clarifying question.
Go ahead. Sure. Yeah.
So you mentioned one of the considerations for designating something that the Historic District Commission is the configuration of the lot, its size and setback. Are there any other examples in the city where that led to a designation by the council?
So just to make sure I understand correctly, where the configuration of the lot was unique enough that it was able to be designated because of that.
Correct.
Oh, I don't know, maybe Greg Mann has an example?
I'm not aware necessarily where that was the only criteria. What we normally call that is the environmental setting for the lot or the property. A lot of our historic properties include the environmental setting. It's not just the structure itself. It is one of the criteria that could be, for one of the reasons it can be designated. So it doesn't really answer your question because I don't think there's one that's just based off the environmental setting. It usually comes with it as part of the structure as well.
Okay. Can I do a test your memory question on that point too? Stay right there, Mr. Mann. Are there any examples to your knowledge where a property like that was later subdivided and houses came up? So I'm imagining over time.
Yeah, the other two lots that Sam had originally shown you that are part of the observatory, they've been subdivided. One of them, I know the existing manor house, it's called, is still intact. It's still there today, but all of the frontage from there to Frederick Avenue has been subdivided into smaller residential lots.
Is that manor house designated?
No.
Okay, well, we have a question before us. Go ahead, Rob.
Sorry, just one more question. And
well, you can start with the discussion too. Ask your question and then start the discussion.
Sure. I recall from the historic, what do you call it, the historic preservation master plan or something like that, we had a discussion about Cedar Avenue being considered, that area being considered for a historic district, but for some reason it was not. Am I completely misremembering that, or?
I mean, this is before my time
Yeah,
as
that's why I'm-
liaison. Yeah, this might be a Greg question.
Cedar, if I remember correctly, included a number of properties. So it was both petitioned by the HDC for both individual designation and or as a collective neighborhood.
Yeah, but it was never.
It was not voted on by the council to proceed with the designation process.
All right, so go ahead and start off. Where are you? Do we? Is there enough here to move forward with the public hearing or no?
So bottom line, no, in my opinion. I think based on prior discussions, you kind of see where I sit with respect to the importance of historic preservation and the role of the Historic District Commission in kind of informing the council here. I just don't see it here. It's not part of a designated historic area, so it's not like we're considering it as part of a conglomeration of buildings. Maybe those buildings were there at some point, as Greg was just talking about, but decisions of prior councils have kind of changed the character of the area. I understand and appreciate the history of the building itself. It seems to me that other than the mention of the subpartition of the DeSalem property, a lot of that history ties into the foundation of St. Martin's itself. And I would think that I would think that the parish would be in the best position to decide how to preserve the legacy that has been formed by St. Martin's in our community. So whether, if they want to put a plaque up or something like that or something, I don't know. But it seems that because the parish themselves are coming to us and because the history of the site ties so intricately with the parish that, they are our experts on it. And then finally, the property itself, it did not ring true to me in the description of the property that the significance of the architecture was so singular that it should be preserved above all else. I mean, I didn't hear anything about other properties that were part of that era that had similar features, whether that is in fact the case. I probably would have liked to have heard a little bit more about that. But based on based on that, I don't think that this meets the very low threshold that I would ordinarily set for sending this to the Historic District Commission for a full review. So,
Thanks, Rob. Okay, Neil.
So I agree with Rob's points. I'd also like to touch on the fact that the property is clearly fallen into disrepair, which is a shame. It was clearly a very nice property at one point, but that point is long ago. And looking at the implications that we just went through, even if it was declared historic, it would probably qualify for demolition because retention causes undue economic hardship. I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money to get this building in shape where it's not going to demolish itself, perhaps at some point. So on that basis, I think that going forward with a historic designation is not appropriate at this time.
Thanks, Neil. I'm going to go to Jim first, then you guys. Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with the points that have been raised by Council Members Wu and Harris. I agree at some point that was likely a very beautiful building. There is an addition. It is in disrepair. I don't believe it any longer embodies the distinctive character of a time and place. It may have at one point. And to Rob's point about, who better to know the history and to be able to gauge its value than the parish that has owned it for many number of years. And I can say as a member of the parish, there have been questions from the community, when is St. Martin's going to finally do something with this property? And, I saw a note from a neighbor in the packet that they're in favor of demolition because it has become a blight. We need that space as a city. We want that very visible space to not be a blight. So I don't think a public hearing is going to develop any additional new information that is going to be able to establish a record. So I think we have what we need in front of us to be able to weigh this. And I agree with my colleagues at this point. I don't believe that historic designation is warranted.
Thank you, Jim. We'll go to Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the packet, I saw the opportunity for grants and maybe state funding, but the disrepair of this site, I can't imagine. And Sam, in your experience, do you think it would cover, I'm guessing, millions of dollars that would be required to even repair, let alone bring out an architecture that once was?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, but we lean on what the applicant stated, which is, repairs could be, at one point it was 2 million, it could be around 1 million to 2 million, and, you can see the condition.
Right. With that, I would, I'm gonna hopefully say this right, not vote to designate this as historic.
Lynn, it's owned by St. Martin's, a religious institution. They're not paying property taxes anyway, right?
Correct, yeah.
So property tax credits isn't going to get them
some of the
any-
credits are not going to give them much assistance, or any
okay.
assistance.
Jamil?
Excellent. So in preparation for this, I read through the packet and went through the Historic District Commission, deliberations on it, and previous Historic District Commission deliberations, just to get a sense and feeling. And I really appreciate the effort and passion that they bring in, as our specialists in this area. But I think for the reasons set forth, I agree with my colleagues, and I would not vote to designate historic.
Okay, so then we need a motion to deny the petition, or what do we need here, Lynn?
You would be taking the second option here that you would, there would be a motion to deny the request to initiate the historic designation process.
Okay, someone want to move that?
I move to deny.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed say nay. Okay, that carries 5-0. Thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you very much.
Next on our agenda is from the city attorney.
No report this evening.
Okay, anything from any other staff? Okay, not seeing any. Then I will remind everybody of our upcoming sessions next week. We will have our debrief on the 2023 city election, Monday, January 22nd, 7:30 p.m. The following Monday, we will have training. Is that open to the public, that training?
It is open to the public.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
On harassment, ethics, and open meetings. That will be Monday, January 29th, 7:30 p.m. And then the next regular meeting of the mayor and council will be on Monday, February 5th. And again, save the date for that great event we got coming up on February 9th at Asbury for the book festival. Until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.